We just finished a series in the beginning where we looked through Genesis and we looked at Abraham and his family and everything that happened sort of in the origins of our faith. And all of that was fun, but I told you at the beginning we're going to skip chapters 1 through 11 because they're so different. But I wanted to come back, one, because I love science and I enjoy the universe and everything that comes with it and all of that. But two, to talk about sort of foundations. So if we look at origins, now we talk about foundations and what we're building on and where faith comes from and stuff like that. And so I just wanted to take this next few weeks, calling it Wonders of the Universe. I stole that from a show that I like, and I think it's appropriate for what we're doing and what we're discussing and that sort of thing. So the idea is God, creation, and sort of the created order. And I'll tell you more about why I like that in a minute. But so first of all, one of the ways, and I hear it not just personally, but I hear it all the time when I'm talking with you, we're out having coffee or whatever it is. We talk about what are the ways that you connect, and always this is one of those ways. It is connection to nature. It is connection to God's creation. It is a connection to things that we don't quite understand, and I think part of that is the awe and the wonder of that. Part of that is that we don't understand, and so it grasps our attention longer than that fleeting second of whatever the next YouTube craze video is, right? And something grasps, and something can still do that. We have a hard time these days because everything's paved, and we move from our nicely regulated, temperature-regulated homes to our temperature-regulated cars and buses and things like that. So we have a hard time sometimes finding this connection. But I want to we're going to have some fun. You may not call it fun, but I absolutely love science. I don't know that I would call myself a science buff because I'm missing so much information, but I enjoy it nonetheless. I've told you a little bit about my story before, some of the reasons that I'm here, some of the reasons that I'm in ministry, and I just want to pull some of that up and share some of the things that I've been through and why this is important to me. So I grew up in a conservative church, in a conservative town, in a conservative state, in a conservative country, and everything around me. Actually, this is real. I went K through 12. I went to the same school that was loosely connected to my church, filled with teachers that went to my church, and filled with students that also went to my church. You could call that some kind of bubble. You know, call it whatever you want, but it was my whole world, and everything that encompassed what I knew was built around that world. And so when I sort of spread my wings, or whatever you want to call it, moved. I went to university in California, and when I moved, I began learning new things. I began seeing the world differently. I began thinking differently, and it sort of sent me into a tailspin. No, it didn't sort of. It really sent me into a tailspin of my faith, and I struggled with how to make the world and my experiences and everything going on fit into that bubble, into that box that I had created for that first 18 years. Everything that I knew was built around that school and that church. And so expanding that knowledge, expanding those experiences, undid the whole thing because things didn't fit into that box. My idea and understanding of God and how God works didn't fit into that into that world. It didn't fit learning and seeing suffering in the world and pain that seemed outside of answers to where I had been and come from. So I kind of started from the ground up, and I did a lot of searching, a lot of seeking, and the place that started for me a foundation to begin from, because everything was torn down, and what started that foundation was this sky. It was being in nature, seeing God's creation, experiencing something that I couldn't explain, something that I didn't know what to do with, and looking at the world and saying, well, I can start here. And truly, for a fleeting minute, I could only start here. I had nothing else to work with. And so that's what I did. Because I knew that when I walked out into the world, when I went backpacking, when I was in nature, I knew that I experienced something that the world couldn't explain, that my culture and society couldn't explain. To be honest, my church couldn't explain it. So that's why this is important to me, and why I think that, and I hear some of these stories from you, maybe not that dramatic, but certainly the connection to nature, seeing the world without the imprint of humanity, and experiencing God in those moments. And so this is why we're here. This is what we do with this. And for me, even still, so I began working with that from there, and still today, foundationally, if you undo all of my theology, I know that I can drop down to this moment, walk up into Golden Ears, sit on the rock at Alder Flats, and soak in God. And sometimes that's what I do, because we have to do something in those moments when everything comes crashing down. So in this, I'm going to do some weird things. Like, we're going to talk about like scientific stuff, and it's going to be a little awkward for a sermon. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about. Are you ready? A little bit about gravity. I know this is odd; it doesn't fit here, but this is really quite amazing. I mean, we think about gravity, and we think about the wonders of the universe, and we sing songs about God of wonders. And here is gravity, and we think how powerful this force is, right? That we are all, everything that you see, drawn in with such gravity to the core of this planet that nothing falls out. Yet at the same time, every day we pick things up, we move them around, we with ease resist and undo gravity's force. And gravity is impacting the planets and the stars and solar systems, our built galaxies are built in this intertwined force with gravity, and yet we have some weird strength to undo it in just a moment. Here we go, you ready? There was, when Newton determined the force of gravity and what it is, and they worked it all out, they began working into the skies. And so they would look at planets and they would look at stars, and they could track what things are supposed to happen based on Newton's law of gravity. In fact, you could calculate, and so we have Mercury sits closest to the sun, and you could calculate when Mercury is going to make its loop and cross the sun based on numbers of gravity. But when they did this, Mercury specifically, they were always off. They could explain everything about gravity and how long something takes to fall and how long the moon circulates the earth. But every time Mercury circled the sun and they knew, okay, it's coming by at this second, they were always off, just by a tiniest little amount. And for years, for decades, they had an idea that, well, there's some rogue planet that's always hidden from Earth. You like that? That's brilliant, right? It's always hidden from Earth and is adding a gravitational pull to Mercury. We could never see it. And then came along Einstein. And Einstein actually was able to explain, and this is one of the huge moments of, I know you're loving this. One of the huge moments of science is Einstein's theory of relativity. And what it did was it explained why they were off by a fraction every time Mercury came around. It's because gravity isn't just a pull, and we're going to do a week on space-time. This is going to be awesome. Gravity isn't just pulling us, okay? It's not just pulling us to ground. What it's actually doing, okay, is if you have a fabric, the sun sits here and it is actually pulling all of this fabric down and changing. And so what Mercury's doing as it circles the sun is it is constantly falling into the sun's pull on this fabric of space-time. And so if you look out into, if we could see in this dimension, if you look out into space, what you would see is mountain-like movement of craters and valleys and things that are created by every single object. Even the earth, even the moon, even you and me, we would see the impact that we have on space fabric around us. And I was thinking about just Mercury being falling and all the others. We were just not having a problem calculating, but it's so close to the sun. About falling into the sun's movement to gravity or movement to space-time that's we don't have words to explain how crazy of a concept that is, to think about the mountains and valleys of space. And I put all of that context, and this is, I've always done this. I hate that we've pitted science and religion and Christianity, but that's what, to me, is amazing about God as creator, is that we're figuring things out and we can explain why an apple falls, but we couldn't explain why Mercury circles the sun like it does. And we could explain, all of these things going on and gravity's pull. And God is working in every moment of that. And you don't have words for that. You go sit and you watch the stars. This is from Manning Park, because you can't see stars here. But all of that awe and wonder happens because God's pull on what's going on. And the foundation of faith happens in that place. It could happen for you somewhere else. That's okay. But it happens in that place for me because we can't explain. And the awe and the wonder and the magnitude of what's happening is just phenomenal. So I was thinking about, here's the weird shift. I was thinking about gravity and the pull and God's pull on us. And we can't always explain it. We don't know what to do with it, but we do know that we're drawn to God. In all kinds of weird ways, in all kinds of strange moments, we are drawn to God. And you're watching now in our culture, you're watching societies shift from sort of an anti-religion to being almost multi-faith in our approach to how things are done. And so for example, here in Maple Ridge, it would be extremely difficult for me to go to the library and say, hey, I'd like to do this event for my church. Can I use the library? Well, they would say no, right? Because we can't do that in public space. But what they will do is every month, an interfaith group that I work with holds a dialogue series there, and we can talk about faith till our eyes turn red, because it's multi-faith and we're exploring the sides of spirituality that we all know is there, but we can't understand. That's the pull of God that we don't understand, but we know, and even outside the church, we know it's okay to talk about the pull of some kind of spirituality or something. Paul is one of the best places to look for this. Paul got it. I think too often we look at Paul and his theology and we build all this stuff out of Paul and we go, well, this is how it's supposed to be. This is the framework that we work within and all of this stuff. But when it came down to it, Paul was willing to go into squares, into cities, into communities that were really anti-Christian or anti-monotheistic might be the right term, in a space that no one was okay with what he was about to say. And he understood that everyone was drawn to God somehow, some way. And so when he digs into faith, he is often saying things like, he goes into the square. You remember the time he goes into the square and there's a row of gods, and he pulls out the unknown God that they've titled because they don't know. Well, we know there's something out there. He says, this is my God. And he begins to speak to them from that space. Well, we're doing that today when we talk about spirituality. We're able to go into the community and say, we can't always explain everything, and that's why we have faith. We can't explain the experience, the internal experience that we have when we go up into Golden Ears and enjoy the quiet night. This text has some difficulties, but I want to look at Romans chapter 1. And I'm not going to dig into the difficulties, okay? If you're reading with me and you go, he skipped this part, come to me afterward. We'll sit down, we'll have coffee, and we'll dig into all of it. I'm fine with that. This just isn't the right place, okay? So we're looking at Romans chapter 1, and I've always found this fascinating. Because Paul is starting, this is actually a Greco-Roman philosophical concept that he's beginning with. And he's totally comfortable using philosophy to help people enter into faith. And this is where he comes from. He says, for what can be known about God, we're in verse 19, is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things he has made. And so they are without excuse. What he's saying is, it is a foundational place for all of us to begin in this moment and experience nature and experience things that God has made and be completely wowed in wonder, in awe, in an absence of words, to be without language to explain. That's what he's saying. He's saying everyone has experienced that and can build from this place a foundation of faith. And it's where he goes next that we're not going to do, but again, you and I can do that. This is what the wonders of the universe is about. It's about looking into these crazy scientific ideas and notions and depths of how God works and how God creates and finding our faith in that moment. And it can't be explained. What I love about this is that I'm using words, but I can't explain this moment. And you know what I'm talking about, sitting by the rushing stream or river, or sitting at the ocean side and literally not being able to explain or describe the feeling that rushes over you at sunrise. That's God working. That's this draw of spirituality that we can talk about out here. And that's a movement, a place. I don't want to do this too much, but that's a place for us to begin those conversations and be able to have those with people around. One of the difficult things about our life today is the noise. And it's visual noise, it's audible noise, it's our TVs and our radios and our kids, in my case, that just produce unbelievable amounts of noise. My Christmas break, 6 kids, 9 adults, 1 house. It was just noise. There was no peace. And what nature does is give us this backdrop to feel and experience God in ways that we don't understand and that we can't describe. It's foundational. It's foundational for me. This week, here's what I'd like. You can listen or not, but this week, take some time to hear nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'll be honest, that may have to happen in the middle of the night to hear nothing. If you can get out while it's nice and find a quiet place, one of the things I love about Maple Ridge is that you can do this with 5 minutes. With 5 minutes, you can move your body into a place where you can experience nature and just be present and feel that rush and feel that excitement and feel that energy that you can't explain. And foundationally, I can set my foundations right here.